All right, so get this. We're diving deep today into Aboriginal Dreamtime stories.
Oh, Dreamtime stories.
Yeah, from the Sunshine Coast.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So you know that stunning stretch of Queensland, Australia, with the incredible beaches and
I
rainforests?
do, yeah, it's gorgeous.
Well, the landscape there, it's basically woven from these ancient legends. And we're going to look at an article called Sunshine Coast Dreamtime, The Legend of Mount Coolum.
I've heard of that one. It really gets into how those stories change the way you experience a place.
Right. And it's written by an expat, too.
Eh,
So talk about finding a deep connection to a new home.
that's so cool.
Now, just to back up a sec, for anyone who may not be familiar, Dreamtime is like the bedrock of Aboriginal culture. You know, their whole understanding of creation, their history, their moral code, all wrapped up in these really epic tales.
Exactly, and they believe that these stories are literally imprinted on the land.
Which is why certain places hold so much meaning.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, so picture this: golden surf beaches, rivers winding through lush greenery, mountains rising up dramatically, and right there in the middle of it all is Mount Coolum,
Okay,
which according to legend wasn't always a mountain.
it wasn't, so what was it?
It was a warrior.
What?
Yeah, it was a warrior. The story goes that Coolum, this young Aboriginal warrior, was totally smitten with Marucci, a girl from his tribe.
Oh, okay.
The elders gave them the thumbs up, all set for a happy ending.
All right.
But wait, there's more. Enter Nanduri, a warrior from a different tribe who obviously didn't get the memo about respecting boundaries.
Uh-oh.
He kidnaps Marucci while Coolum's out hunting.
Oh, no.
Bold move.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though, how these stories often echo societal norms, you know?
Mm.
Kidnapping someone who's promised to another, that's like a huge disruption. And it usually has consequences.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
Coolum was not about to let this slide. He goes after Nanduri, and they have this crazy battle.
Oh, okay.
But spoiler alert, doesn't end well for Coolum.
Oh, no.
Nanduri defeats him and, well, takes his head clean off.
Oh, my God.
It's brutal.
Yeah. But it's what happens next that makes this a true Dreamtime legend.
Right.
Coolum's body, filled with grief and rage, transforms into, you guessed it, Mount Coolum.
Whoa.
And his head becomes Majumba Island.
Hold on. So every time someone surfs at that beach, they're riding Coolum's transformed body.
That's the idea.
That is wild.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop there. The spirit gods were pretty upset with Ninduri for all the drama he stirred up.
Oh, I bet.
So they turned him into Mount Ninduri.
Wow. Talk about poetic justice.
Right.
I mean, the landscape literally reflects the consequences of his actions.
Exactly.
It really highlights how the Aboriginal people saw this deep connection between actions and the natural world.
Okay, but let's not forget about Marucci.
Oh, right. Poor Marucci.
She flees to the Blackhall Ranges, and her tears for Coolum carve out the Marucci River.
So her grief becomes part of the landscape.
That's heavy.
It is. And then she transforms into a swan, eternally searching for Coolum's spirit along the river.
So we've got mountains and islands born from a warrior's grief and rage, and a river formed from tears of love.
It's powerful imagery.
It really is. I'm starting to see how these stories bring the landscape to life in a whole new way.
Exactly. It's not just about pretty scenery anymore. You start to understand the forces that shaped it, forces that are both human and something beyond.
Right. And this is where it gets really interesting for me, this constant transformation in the story. What does it tell us about how Aboriginal people saw the world? Is it all about change being the only constant?
Ooh, that's a great question. And it might be a key to understanding not just this particular legend, but Dreamtime stories in general. You know, they're not static. They're always evolving, just like the landscape itself.
And like us, we're always changing and growing too. Maybe these stories remind us that transformation is just part of life, part of nature, part of everything.
Exactly. And that even in the face of tragedy, there's this enduring power of love and connection that shapes who we are and the world around us.
It's amazing how much depth these stories add to a place.
It really is. It changes everything.
So we've got mountains and islands born from grief and rage, a river born from tears. And this idea of constant transformation.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is.
Hmm.
But it's a powerful starting point for understanding the Dreamtime and how it shapes our view of the world.
I completely agree. It's amazing, isn't it? This whole idea of transformation. Like, it's not just an Aboriginal thing.
Right.
You see it everywhere. You think about Greek mythology,
Oh, yeah.
Daphne turning into a laurel tree, Narcissus a flower. It's like humans have always needed to explain nature through these stories of change.
So it's not just about explaining where mountains and rivers come from. It's about connecting to something bigger.
Exactly. And it's also about creating a map of the land and a map of morality.
Because Kulam and Nindari, their actions didn't just shape the land. They also show us what happens when you mess with the balance of things.
Right. It's like a warning built into the mountains themselves. Don't disrupt the natural order, or you might become a permanent part of it.
That's a pretty intense message.
It is. But it makes sense when you remember that for Aboriginal cultures, the land isn't just a backdrop.
Yeah.
It's an ancestor, a living being with its own stories and power.
Which reminds me of the author of this article, the expat. They talk about how learning these stories made them feel more connected to their new home. Like suddenly the landscape had this whole other dimension.
It's like they were given a key to unlock a deeper understanding. It wasn't just about beaches and scenery anymore. It was about the stories behind them.
It's like I've been to the Sunshine Coast, and it is stunning. But knowing this legend now, imagining Kulam's rage becoming that Mountain Maroochyd's tears forming the river, it totally changes how I see it.
That's exactly it. That's the power of these stories. They change how we experience a place. We're not just tourists anymore. We become part of this ancient narrative.
And that's what I love about this whole concept of dream time. It's not just about the past, it's about now, about how we relate to the world, to each other, to the very ground beneath our feet.
It's a powerful perspective, especially in a world that often feels so disconnected.
Right.
These stories ground us. They remind us that we're part of something ancient and enduring.
So we've talked about how Dreamtime stories make the landscape come alive, how they teach us about consequences and interconnectedness.
Right.
But what about the love story at the heart of it all? What's the message there?
Well, to me, it speaks to the power of love, even in the face of tragedy.
Okay.
Kulam and Maroochyd's connection. It literally shapes the landscape. It's a testament to the idea that love can outlast loss,
Yeah.
that it leaves its mark on the world.
So it's not just a tragic romance. It's about how love, even when it's heartbroken, can be this force of creation. Like we're talking about a river made of tears.
Exactly. And it reminds us that even in the darkest times, there's beauty, there's connection, there's something worth holding on to.
And sometimes those things are reflected in the most unexpected places, like the mountains and rivers around us.
That's right.
It makes you wonder what other stories are hidden in landscapes we think we know.
I think that's the invitation these Dreamtime legends offer us. To look deeper, to listen more closely, to understand that the world is full of stories just waiting to be discovered.
So knowing this legend now, how would you experience the Sunshine Coast differently? Would you look at those mountains and rivers the same way again?
I don't think it's possible to see them the same way. Once you know the story, it becomes part of how you experience it. It adds a depth and richness that wouldn't be there otherwise.
And that's what's so amazing about it. It's like the world becomes more magical and mysterious,
Yeah,
full of hidden meanings and ancient whispers.
exactly. And it reminds us that even in our modern world, the power of storytelling is still so strong. It connects us to our past, to each other, and to nature.
It's like we've been given this amazing new lens to see the Sunshine Coast through,
Right.
but it makes you think.
Yeah.
This isn't just about Australia.
No.
These Dreamtime stories, this idea of a landscape full of meaning, it makes me wonder about the places we see every day.
No, absolutely. Like,
Yeah.
think about your hometown. The parks you go to, the mountains you see in the distance. What stories are hidden there? What history, what heartbreaks, what victories shape those places?
I'm already thinking about this hill I hike. The one that overlooks the city.
Yeah.
It's always had this kind of quiet power. But now I can't help but imagine ancient stories swirling around it.
I love that.
I'm definitely going to look at it differently now.
I think that's what's so cool about all of this. We start to see the world not just as like mountains and rivers, but as this tapestry woven from stories and beliefs and generations of experience.
And those places become so much richer,
Wow.
more vibrant, more alive. It's like we're invited to become part of the story.
Exactly. And to connect with the land on a much deeper level.
Like we're entrusted with keeping those stories alive.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And it's a responsibility we shouldn't take lightly. It's about respecting the land, honoring the cultures that came before us, recognizing that everything is connected.
So what do we do with this new awareness?
I think it's a call to explore, to find the stories of the places we live in, to listen to the wind, the rivers, the silence of the mountains.
Yeah.
To ask ourselves, what happened here? Who walked this path before me?
And to remember that every place has a story.
If we're just willing to listen.
So we started with an article about a mountain in Australia.
We did.
And we ended up on this incredible journey through time and culture and the power of stories.
And hopefully we've sparked some curiosity in our listeners.
Yeah.
A desire to uncover the hidden stories all around them.
Because the world is full of magic,
It really is.
just waiting to be discovered.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.